It was 1997. The air inside Apple's Cupertino campus was thick with fear. The company was hemorrhaging money. It was losing almost $1 billion a year. Its market share had shriveled to almost nothing. The beige, boxy computers sat unsold on shelves, monuments to a forgotten glory. The press was writing obituaries. Financial analysts were placing bets on when, not if, the company would file for bankruptcy. Dell's founder famously said that if he were in charge, he would shut it down and give the money back to the shareholders. The brand that had once promised the future felt like a relic of the past. The light was fading. Inside the sprawling, empty hallways, a silent dread walked with the remaining employees. They were the faithful, the ones who still believed in the original dream. But belief doesn't pay the bills. Every new product launch was a new failure. The product line was a tangled mess of confusing names and overlapping features. The Apple QuickTake camera, the Apple Pippin video game console, the Newton message pad. Each was a branch reaching for the sun, but the tree itself was dying at the root. The company had lost its soul. It had forgotten who it was and, more importantly, who it was for. Then, a rumor started to spread. A whisper that grew into a hopeful roar. He was coming back. Steve Jobs, the fiery co-founder who had been cast out of his own kingdom a decade earlier, was returning. It was a desperate, last-ditch move, a Hail Mary pass in the final seconds of the game. He was not returning as a savior, at least not at first. He was an advisor, a temporary CEO for a company on life support. No one knew what he would do, but for the first time in a long time, something other than despair was in the air. It was a spark, a tiny flicker of possibility in the suffocating darkness. Today, Apple is the most valuable company on the planet. Its name is synonymous with innovation. Its name is synonymous with design. Its name is synonymous with staggering wealth. It is a global empire whose cash reserves dwarf the economies of many nations. The journey from that bleak precipice in 1997 to this incredible summit is not a simple story of business strategy. It is a human story. It is a story about focus. It is a story about art. It is a story about understanding a deep, unspoken human need. It is the story of how a company on the verge of death didn't just survive. It learned how to win the world. It really is remarkable. The story begins, as legends often do, in a humble setting. A suburban garage in Los Altos, California. There were two Steves. Steve Jobs was the visionary. Steve Jobs was the intense. Steve Jobs was the barefoot dreamer who saw the future in flashes of brilliant light. He saw not just what technology could do, but what it could mean. He believed a computer could be more than a tool for corporations, more than a tool for hobbyists. It could be a bicycle for the mind. It could be an object of personal empowerment. He had the passion. He had the drive. He had an almost frightening power of persuasion. He was the artist. His partner was Steve Wozniak, the gentle engineering wizard. Woz was the magician who could conjure miracles from a tangle of wires and silicon chips. He could see the elegant pathways through complex circuits. While Jobs dreamed of the destination, Wozniak meticulously built the road to get there. In 1976, he single-handedly designed the Apple II, a simple circuit board that was a marvel of efficient engineering. He wanted to give it away for free to his friends at the local computer club. It was Jobs who saw its true potential. He saw a product. With a small investment and a huge leap of faith, they founded Apple Computer. Their first breakthrough, the Apple II, changed everything. Introduced in 1977, it was not just a circuit board anymore. It was a complete personal computer, ready to use, housed in a friendly-looking plastic case. It had a keyboard. It could display color graphics on a TV screen. For the first time, a computer felt accessible, almost friendly. It wasn't a cold, intimidating machine of the corporate world. It was something you could bring into your home. It was something your kids could use for schoolwork. It was a revolution packaged in beige plastic. The Apple II was a phenomenal success. It made the two Steves millionaires. It turned their garage startup into a real company. It put Apple on the map. It ignited the personal computer industry. The company went public in 1980 and one of the most successful stock market debuts in history. Jobs and Wozniak had taken a niche hobbyist obsession and placed it at the center of popular culture. They didn't just sell a machine, they sold an idea. The idea that one person, with one computer, could change the world. Yeah, that's how it started. The next great leap was the Macintosh. Unveiled in 1984 with a now legendary Super Bowl commercial, it was a work of art. The Mac threw away the confusing command lines of other computers. Instead, it offered a beautiful graphical user interface. Point the mouse at icons on the screen. Click, drag. It was intuitive. It was fun. It was, as the slogan promised, the computer for the rest of us. It was a technological masterpiece, but its brilliance masked a growing darkness within the company. The Macintosh was expensive to build, and its price was too high for most people. The tension between Jobs' artistic vision and the commercial realities of the market reached a breaking point. He was a difficult, demanding leader. He pushed his teams to the brink to achieve impossible things. But his methods created friction and conflict. He clashed with the company's new CEO, John Sculley, a former Pepsi executive. Jobs had recruited Sculley with the legendary line, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" In 1985, after a bitter power struggle, the board sided with Sculley. Steve Jobs was forced out of the company he had created. His departure left a void that could not be filled. For the next decade, Apple drifted. It was a ship without a captain, or a compass. The company was run by a series of professional managers who understood spreadsheets but not soul. They tried to compete with Microsoft and the sprawling world of IBM-compatible PCs by playing their game. Performa, Quadra, Centris. Each slightly different, none of them special. The simple elegance of the original Mac was lost in a fog of corporate strategy and market research. The focus was gone. Sales stagnated. The magic faded. Apple, once the rebel, the pirate, the artist, had become just another corporation. It made computers, but it had forgotten why. The fans who had tattooed the Apple logo on their arms started to wonder if they had made a mistake. The company that had once inspired such devotion was now a source of disappointment. By the mid-1990s, the financial losses were staggering. The company was just months away from insolvency. The kingdom was crumbling. The dream was dying. The world had moved on, and Apple was being left behind. It was bleak. In late 1996, Apple bought Next, the company Jobs had founded after his exile. The official reason was to acquire Next's advanced operating system software. The real reason was to get Jobs back. He returned as an interim CEO, a title that barely concealed the seismic shift about to take place. He walked back into the company he had built and found it bloated, unfocused, and on the verge of collapse. The creative energy was gone, replaced by committees and bureaucracy. He knew that small, timid changes would not be enough. A hard reset was needed. His first actions were swift and brutal. He gathered the top executives in a boardroom. He asked them to tell him what was wrong with the company. Then he started cutting. He slashed projects by the dozens. The Newton, the Pippin, failed printers, servers, all gone. He reduced the confusing array of 15 desktop models to just one. He fired managers who couldn't give him a straight answer. The atmosphere was electric with tension. People were terrified, but they were also mesmerized. For the first time in years, someone was making decisions. Someone had a vision. Jobs walked barefoot around the campus, observing, listening. He spent hours in the design studio with a young, talented designer named Joni Ive. He roamed the halls and ate in the cafeteria, asking employees what they were working on. He famously got in an elevator with a young man and asked him what he did. When the man couldn't explain his job in a simple, compelling way, Jobs fired him on the spot. The message was clear. Everything you do must have a purpose. There is no room for mediocrity here. We are not just trying to survive. We are here to be great. One of his most significant early moves was a public one. At the 1997 Macworld Expo, Jobs appeared on a giant screen. He announced a partnership with Apple's arch-rival, Microsoft. The crowd booed. It felt like a surrender, but it was a masterstroke of pragmatism. The deal brought a crucial $150 million investment from Microsoft and a promise to keep making its Office software for the Mac. It was a signal to the world that Apple was not going to die. Jobs ended his presentation by unveiling a new advertising campaign. Think different. It wasn't about a product, it was about a philosophy. It was a promise that the soul of Apple had returned. With the company stabilized, Jobs turned his attention to the product. He and Johnny Ive worked in secret, pouring their energy into a single project. The goal was to create a new computer that would shatter the perception of what a computer should be. For years, computers had been boring beige boxes. They were functional but joyless. Jobs wanted to make something you would be proud to have on your desk. He wanted to make something with personality. He wanted to bring color back to a gray world. The result was the iMac, and it was a thunderclap. Launched in 1998, the iMac G3 looked like nothing that had come before it. It was a single, all-in-one unit encased in a stunning, translucent shell of Bondi blue plastic. You could see inside it. It had a handle on top. It had no floppy disk drive, a controversial decision that showed Apple was looking forward, not back. Setting it up was simple. You plugged in the power, plugged in the internet, and turned it on. It was friendly, it was fun, and utterly captivating. The first time you saw one, you stopped. The light caught the curved plastic. It felt less like a machine and more like a piece of pop art. The iMac was an instant, runaway success. It sold millions of units and brought Apple back to profitability for the first time in years. But its impact was far greater than just sales figures. It fundamentally changed the relationship between people and their computers. It made design a central part of the conversation. It showed that the way a product looks and feels is not a superficial detail. It is the essence of the experience. The iMac was the first note in a symphony of design that would define Apple's next 2 decades. It was the physical embodiment of the Think Different mantra. This focus on design became a religion inside Apple. It was not just about the outer shell, it was about every single detail. The way the power cord clicked into place, the sound the latch made when you opened a laptop, the breathing sleep light that pulsed like a living thing. Jobs and Ive obsessed over materials, translucent plastics, machined aluminum. They insisted on simplicity, relentlessly removing buttons, ports, and anything else that was not absolutely necessary. They were not just building computers. They were crafting objects of desire, and in doing so, they were teaching the world a new language of technology. The iMac saved Apple. The iPod made it a cultural force. By the turn of the millennium, the music industry was in chaos. The rise of digital music and file-sharing services like Napster had turned everything upside down. Buying music was complicated. Existing MP3 players were clunky, ugly, and hard to use. Jobs saw an opportunity, not just to sell a device, but to solve the whole problem. He envisioned a seamless experience, from buying a song to listening to it on the go. The mission was simple and audacious, and 1,000 songs in your pocket. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod. It was a small white box. It was beautiful in its simplicity, but its true genius was the scroll wheel. You could navigate through thousands of songs with just the touch of a thumb. It was a magical, tactile experience, paired with the iTunes software and the new iTunes Music Store. It offered a complete, legal, and easy way to manage a digital music library. The iPod didn't just change how we listen to music, it changed our relationship with it. It became a personal soundtrack to our lives, a constant companion. Apple was no longer just a computer company. It was a part of daily life. The success of the iPod was immense, but Jobs was already thinking about the next step. He was famously paranoid. He knew that one day a company would put a music player inside a mobile phone, and the iPod would be obsolete. So he decided that Apple had to be that company. He assembled a secret team and gave them an almost impossible task: reinvent the phone. The project was incredibly stressful, pushing the limits of what was technologically possible. They had to create a multi-touch screen that actually worked, an operating system that was powerful yet simple, and a design that was thin and beautiful. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto the stage at Macworld and changed the world. "Today," he said, "Apple is going to reinvent the phone." He introduced the iPhone. It felt like watching a science fiction movie. A screen with no physical keyboard. You could pinch to zoom. You could scroll with a flick of your finger. It was a widescreen iPod, a revolutionary mobile phone, a breakthrough internet communicator. The moment he swiped to unlock the screen, a collective gasp went through the auditorium. The light from the screen illuminated his face. In slow motion, you could see the future arriving. The pocket revolution was complete. It was that simple and profound. The iPhone was a spectacular device, but its hardware was only half the story. The true genius of Apple's strategy was the ecosystem. It wasn't a single product, it was a universe of interlocking devices. Hardware, software, services. It started with the App Store, launched in 2008. Suddenly, the iPhone became a platform for a million ideas. Developers could create apps, games, banking. This created a powerful lock-in effect that felt like a benefit, not a prison. If you owned an iPhone, your next computer was likely to be a Mac. Photos, contacts, calendars. If you bought a Mac, an iPad seemed like a natural addition. Your music from Apple Music was on all your devices. Your credit cards were in Apple Pay. Each new product you bought made your other Apple products better. It was a virtuous cycle. This was not a fortress built with high walls. It was a beautiful, walled garden where everything was easy, safe, and just worked. The user experience was paramount. Other companies competed on specs, more gigahertz, more megapixels. Apple focused on the holistic feel of the product. The software and hardware were developed in tandem. Code, silicon. This meant Apple's devices often felt faster and smoother than competitors, even with weaker specs on paper. Updates were delivered to all devices at the same time. This reliability built deep and lasting trust with customers. This ecosystem became Apple's greatest competitive advantage. Rivals like Google, rivals like Samsung, they could build great hardware. They could build great software. But they couldn't control both ends like Apple. This integration allowed Apple to command premium prices. People weren't just paying for a phone. Peace of mind, simplicity, access to a world where technology faded into the background, allowing them to get on with their lives. As Apple's empire grew, a quiet but profound shift was happening deep within its engineering labs. For years, Apple had relied on other companies, like IBM and Intel, to design and manufacture the central processors, the brains, of its computers and phones. This created a dependency. Apple's product roadmaps were often constrained by the schedules and priorities of its suppliers. Steve Jobs, and later Tim Cook, understood that to truly control your own destiny, you must control your core technologies. The most important of these was silicon. The journey began with the iPhone. Apple started designing its own custom chips, the A series, to power its mobile devices. This was a massive, risky investment, but it paid off spectacularly. By designing its own processors, Apple could tailor them perfectly to its software and hardware, optimizing for performance, for battery life, and for new features. Secure enclave that protects fingerprint and face data. Each year, Apple's A-series chips leapfrogged the competition, giving the iPhone a significant performance advantage that competitors struggled to match. The silicon heart of the iPhone was Apple's own. This strategy reached its logical and dramatic conclusion in 2020. After a decade and a half of partnership with Intel, Apple announced it would be transitioning its entire Mac lineup to its own custom chips. The first of these, the M1 chip, was a revelation. It was astonishingly fast and incredibly power efficient. Laptops that once got hot and had mediocre battery life could now run for nearly a full day on a single charge, without a fan, and were more powerful than their predecessors. It was a technical achievement that redrew the map of the personal computer industry overnight. Mastering silicon gave Apple an almost insurmountable advantage. It allowed the company to create experiences that were impossible for its rivals to copy. The tight integration between the M1 chip, Mac OS, and the physical hardware of the MacBook enabled a level of performance and efficiency that was simply in a different league. It meant that the best computer for running Apple's software was, without a doubt, a computer made by Apple. This vertical integration, from the deepest layer of the chip to the pixels on the screen, is the engine of Apple's continued innovation and the guarantor of its future. So, how did Apple win the world? It wasn't by having the most features. It wasn't by having the lowest price. It wasn't even by always having the most advanced technology. For years, competitors had phones with better cameras, laptops with more ports, and software with more options for customization. Yet, Apple grew, and its competitors fought for the scraps. The victory was not a technical one. It was a human one. The story of Apple's triumph is the story of a company that finally understood what it was actually selling. Other companies sold technology. They sold speeds and feeds, megabytes and megapixels. They sold you a box of wires and circuits, and left it up to you to figure out how to make it a meaningful part of your life. Apple sold something different. It sold an experience. It sold a feeling. The feeling of unboxing a product that has been crafted with obsessive care. The feeling of an interface that anticipates your needs. The feeling of technology that is so simple and intuitive that it disappears, allowing you to focus on your work, your creativity, your connections. This is the central lesson. People don't buy products. They buy better versions of themselves. They don't want a faster processor. They want to feel more productive and creative. They don't want a higher resolution camera. They want to capture their memories more beautifully and feel like a good photographer. Apple won because it focused relentlessly on the human outcome. It acted as a curator for our digital lives, making hard choices to remove complexity so that we wouldn't have to. It sold simplicity in an increasingly complicated world. In the end, the most surprising truth is this. Apple's greatest product was never the Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone. Its greatest product was trust. The belief that if you buy a product with an Apple logo on it, it will be well-designed, easy to use, respectful of your privacy, and will simply work. This trust, built over decades through meticulous design and a relentless focus on the user experience, is more valuable than any patent or factory. The lesson isn't about building better machines. The lesson is that if you want to win the world, you must first forget about the technology and remember the human.